Barakatah YAHAWAH, BaHa YAHAWASHI, BaHa RAWCHAA QADASH. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is In the Presence of a Ruler. And pretty much this lesson comes to inspiration of a video I was watching a little earlier. Elder Apostle Gabar did dealing with Agrippa, and he mentioned how Elder Karatazar from Dallas, I'm sorry, not from Dallas, from Vegas, did a lesson. Just bear with me 1 second. Okay, Elder Karatazar from Vegas did a lesson on it, and I'm not sure if I watched his video or not. But once I finish, Lord's will, I go and check, see if I saw his video or not. If not, Lord's will, I check it out. But this has been an argument that they've pushed for a minute. These wacky tacky Christians. Knowing it doesn't help their cause, but some of them are blinded. But in the case of Vocab, he's just a devious little bastard. So that's what they'll use any trick in the trade, to try to confuse the people. But it's beautiful because it's supposed to be that way. You have to have stumbling blocks and pitfalls, in the way, so that those that the Lord don't want can fall in those pits and ditches. So let's start off with the book of Matthew 10. I want to just read this precept, and then a thought came into mind using one of the precepts that Elder Apostle Gabar brought out, and I believe the Elder Karatazar brought out also. And then from there, just other precepts started coming to mind, and I just started writing them down and going through different precepts. So I got a couple of precepts that I wrote down. Lord, so we can go through this and bring edification to the lambs and the sheeps out there. So Matthew 10:16 says, "Behold," this is Yahawashi speaking, it's all in red. "Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves." And we are sheep, and Esau, the other nations, and 2/3 of Israel, and Israelites in general don't believe, they are also wolves. So the Lord is sending us as meek animals in the midst of wild animals, so you can understand. "Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves." Wise as serpents meaning what? Use the wisdom of a serpent, but be harmless as a dove. And this is the true mark of wisdom. Wisdom is not something that you learn, and this knowledge you learn, and then you're in a situation where you could use a certain situation for your advantage, and yet you turn around and fuck it all up because you want to be Mr. Macho Man. You want to be Mr. Well, I know everything. You can't tell me nothing. In certain cases, you got to use wisdom. You got to take the low just to get out of a certain situation. And this is the case with the Apostle Paul. The Apostle Paul was in a situation where you had Edomites that had him in prison, and the reason why he did it in that fashion, because reason why he appeared before Festus and Felix, I believe it was, and Agrippa and all of them, was because when they arrested him, he appealed to Caesar because the Jews wanted to grab him up to put him to death. So he appealed to Caesar because he knew that that whole thing was being done bogus. It was bogus what they were accusing him of. So he used his Roman citizenship, not, as he says in Acts, not to accuse his brethren, but in order to be able to escape that situation. And the Apostle Paul was a very wise man that used many situations to help him escape out of whatever predicament he was faced with. And this is the truth of why he told, what he said to Agrippa, because he knew that Agrippa was an Edomite. He knew that Agrippa, through the conversion of his family, going all the way back to Antipater, that they knew the laws, the customs, and the prophets and all of that. So he used that situation, to help benefit his situation. So the first precept we're going to go to outside of Matthew is in the book of Proverbs, right? And we're going to build off of that, because that is a true mark of wisdom, knowing when to speak and knowing when the fuck to shut up. Because when we go to Ecclesiastes 3, it speaks about, a time to speak, a time to refrain from speaking, a time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing, so on and so forth. So there's many different parallels: a time of peace, a time of war, a time to love, a time of hate, so on and so forth. All right. So Proverbs 15:1, it says, "A soft answer turneth away wrath." See. So a soft answer turneth away wrath. So if there's someone that's angry in a volatile situation, and you being a man of wisdom can use the wisdom and using soft answers and using wisdom to diffuse the situation, to avoid, conflict, why not? Because if it says, but grievous words stir up anger. So here it is, you already got this guy that is on a short fuse, he's already lit, he's looking for any excuse to exact vengeance or to do whatever he's gonna do, and you're gonna add more gasoline to the fire? That's not a mark of wisdom. A mark of wisdom would be somebody that can figure out, what can I say to this individual to diffuse him, to bring him back down, to calm him down, so that shit won't escalate to where it doesn't need to be. And that's pretty much what the Apostle Paul used. Now there's a couple of precepts here I want to just check real quick. Just bear with me 1 second. Okay, that one I got on the list already. And this one I believe I didn't go to it, but this is an example. Let me check this one right quick. Yeah, that was an example. Okay, so let's go to the next precept. The next precept was a precept that came to mind, which pretty much through the spirit and power of YAHAWASHI started the whole idea of this. That's why the name of the lesson is In the Presence of a Ruler. We have all of the tools that we need to maneuver in this world, with the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of YAHAWASHI. And wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of thy times and strength of salvation. Using wisdom can get you out of many different situations. Oh, that's beautiful. The elder put up this precept, Ecclesiastes 28:18. And Shalom, YAHAWASHI brought a thumb. So all of you righteous brothers out there, if there's any apostles, elders, bishops, brothers out there, sincere, shalom to you, and shalom to the sisters, the sincere ones, the very few that watch. Ecclesiastes 28:18. Many have fallen by the edge of the sword, but not so many as have fallen by the tongue. That's right, because that mother floater right there is a very unruly dude. That damn tongue. All right. Okay, so it's a little windy out here, so let me know, if it's too crazy, then what I'll do, I'll try to turn it, a different way so that you won't get so much of the wind. But let me know. So the next precept we have is in the book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible, 10:4. When I say that, I mean the Ecclesiastes. You have an Ecclesiastes, then you have an Ecclesiasticus, or the book of Sirach. So Ecclesiastes 10:4 says, if the spirit of a ruler rise up against thee, as in the case of the Apostle Paul. He was in a situation where you had a ruler that was risen against him because he had judgment over him. So what did the Apostle Paul do? If the spirit of the ruler rise up against thee, leave not thy place. Because remember, he's still over you. He still has the authority over you. So leave not thy place. And what should you do? Use wisdom. It says, for yielding pacifieth great offenses. And this is exactly what the Apostle Paul did. And you know how we know that he was successful in what he did? Was because of the answer that Agrippa gave him, that King Agrippa gave him. He said, almost thou persuadest me to be a Christian. The Apostle Paul wasn't trying to convert him. He was playing him. Oh, well, why would the Apostle Paul do that? Well, the Apostle Paul was a very wise man. He used situations to get out of situations. There was something else that I had spoken on years ago. I can't really remember what it was, but there was a precept that something that the Apostle Paul did using a situation where he was in, where he was able to, by wisdom, get out of that situation. Now the scriptures say, thou shalt not sow discord among brethren, right? Now, would the Apostle Paul do something like that? Would he do something like that in order to get out of a situation? In righteousness, mind you. The answer is yes. Because you could, the scripture, didn't he say, I caught you with guile? So when we go to the book of Acts, the 23rd chapter, right? You had the Pharisees and Sadducees against the Apostle Paul, right? And what did the Apostle Paul do? He knew the odds were against him, so he used this situation to get out of that. Check this out. Acts 23:1. And Paul, earnestly beholding the council, said, men and brethren, I have lived in all good conscience before the Most High until this day. And the high priest Ananias commanded them that stood by him to smite him on the mouth. Then said Paul unto him, the Most High will smite thee, thou whited wall. In other words, you hypocrite. For sittest thou to judge me after the law, and commandest me to be smitten contrary to the law? And they that stood by said, revilest thou the Most High's high priest? Then said Paul, I wish not, brethren, that he was the high priest. For it is written, thou shalt not speak evil of the ruler of thy people. Using wisdom, using the scriptures, right? But, because remember, the Pharisees and Sadducees were against him. But, when Paul perceived that the one part were Sadducees and the other Pharisees, he cried out in the council, men and brethren, I am a Pharisee, using his what? His Pharisee card in this situation, in wisdom, to favor his situation. The son of a Pharisee, of the hope and resurrection of the dead, I am called in question. Resurrection, which deals with what? With the rising of the spirits from the grave. And he knew that the Pharisees believed that, but the Sadducees didn't. Get where we going? But when he had so said, there arose a dissension. So what happened in that moment, when he perceived that part of them were Pharisees, part of them were Sadducees, he used that as a situation to what? To sow discord among brethren. But not in an evil, wicked way, but to benefit him. And when he had so said, there arose a dissension between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the multitude was divided. So what happened? It took off some of the, what's the word I'm looking for? Attention off of the Apostle Paul, because now they're going back and forth about or about the resurrection, about the spirits, you know, and one will argue whatever, you know how Jake do, they get aggressive. For the Sadducees say that there is no resurrection, neither angel nor spirit, but the Pharisees confessed both. And there arose a great cry, and the scribes that were of the Pharisees part arose and strove, saying, we find no evil in this man. So what did he use? Wisdom to get out of that situation when he perceived that part of them were Pharisees and part of them were Sadducees. But if a spirit or an angel has spoken to him, let us not fight against him. And when there arose a great dissension, the chief captain, fearing lest Paul should have been pulled in pieces of them, commanded the soldiers to go down and to take him by force from among them and to bring him into the castle. And that's the point. All right? Now, let's go from there. Let's go to Ecclesiastes again, the 8th chapter, and let's go to the 2nd verse. I counsel thee to keep the king's commandment. Why? Because he has the ultimate authority on earth, right? And that in regard of the oath of the Most High, because they're supposed to follow what the Most High says, even though we know that they don't. Which goes to what? Romans 13. And that is only if what the decree is of that empire, or whatever the case is, does not go contrary to the Most High's laws. And this is where you have to have a division and understanding of what the scripture is saying. Because this scripture we're about to read is used by these pastors in the churches, which was given to them by Esau, to say that whatever the government says, they just got to obey no matter what, because the Most High set them up. Yeah, the Most High set them up, but not to make his people go against his laws, statutes, and commandments. Because if that's the case, we're not the Babylonians set up, the Babylonian Empire set up by the Most High. So then why? Because Daniel said that you are a king of kings, for the Most High have set you so. But did Daniel yield to bowing down to that idol that they set up? No. So you have to know when to obey and when to disobey, so you can understand. So Romans 13:1, let every soul be subject unto the higher powers. Who are the higher powers? The Most High ultimately. And the ones that are in power and rulership are set up by who? By the Most High. For there is no power but of the Most High. The powers that be are ordained of the Most High. So they were ordained to sit down. And this is why this scripture speak about Esau being the Most High's whipping stick. It says, whosoever therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of the Most High. And they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. Why? Because when you go to, matter of fact, before we read on, let's go real quick to Matthew. And really this scripture in Matthew 10, is it Matthew 10? Let me see. I believe it's Matthew 10, or could it be Matthew 5? Or could it be 6? It's one of those. That's not it. Right, Matthew 5:25. Really, this scripture here, Matthew 5:25, when it says, agree with thine adversaries quickly. Yeah, you could use that for, when you get pulled over by the police and all that. But really what that's talking about is if you have a dispute or a disagreement with someone, that's because at that moment y'all become adversaries. So it says agree with your adversary quickly, right? Agree with thine adversary quickly whilst thou art in the way with him. Right, so here it is, y'all going at it, so you trying to find a way to quell the situation. Why? lest at any time the adversary deliver thee to the judge, and the judge deliver thee to the officer, and thou be cast into prison. You know? So that's why we are to obey, because if not, they receive damnation to themselves if you resist or try to fight against, you know, this particular empire that was set up by the Most High. All right? And that's what it was, because back then you had a lot of Jakes that were rebelling and trying to overthrow the Roman Empire because they did not like the fact that they were being taxed. It says, for rulers, back in Romans 13:3, for rulers are not a terror to good works. And who's saying this? The Apostle Paul. But to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. And you've heard of Elder Pastor say it before, when the officers in New York used to come and arrest them, you know, back in the days. And then, you know, they would say, one thing I got to say about you Israelites is that you guys are gentlemen. We never have any problems from you guys, you know. And that's the truth. Why? Because brothers will behave themselves as men of the Lord in wisdom. So it says, for he is the minister of the Most High to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. For he beareth not the sword in vain. For he is the minister of the Most High, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. And that's why the Apostle Paul was using wisdom when he was dealing with Agrippa. It says, wherefore you must needs be subject, not only for wrath, but also for conscience sake. And you know, that's pretty much it. You can read the rest. So, moving on, let's go back to Ecclesiastes 8. Let's read the second verse again and then go on to the third verse. So it says, I counsel thee, this is Ecclesiastes 8:2, I counsel thee to keep the king's commandment, and that in regard of the oath of the Most High. All right? Just bear with me 1 second. All right, so then it goes on to say, be not hasty to go out of his sight, stand not in an evil thing, for he doeth whatsoever pleaseth him, because they have the ultimate say. And this is what the Apostle Paul was doing. He was yielding. He was, you know, using wisdom to pacify Herod, Agrippa, the king. Verse 4, where the word of a king is, there is power. And that's why they said, eventually they said, man, this man ain't do nothing wrong. If he had not appealed to Caesar, we would have let him go. Because he presented his cause, he was respectful, he used wisdom, he used the situation that he was in to try to get out of that situation, which he did. And then eventually he was sent to where? To Caesar. Because he had appealed to Caesar, because he didn't want to deal with the Jews. It says, and who may, let me read that again. Where the word of a king is, there is power. And who may say unto him, what doest thou? Right, because he's going to do whatever the hell he going to do. Let's go to Job 34. Job chapter 34. And start at verse 16. It says, if now thou hast understanding, hear this, hearken to the voice of my words. Shall even he that hateth right govern? Because Esau's not going to govern. Shall the thorn of iniquity have fellowship with thee that frameth mischief by a law? The answer to that is no. So shall even he that hateth right govern? And wilt thou, it says, and wilt thou condemn him that is most just? Right, because you have those that go before, and evil, the law is slack, and true judgment never really goes forth, right? Is it fit to say to a king, thou art wicked? Because the Apostle Paul knew that Agrippa and them, they were wicked, because they are the wicked. He said it in Hebrews, he said it in Romans, that the Most High hates Esau, that Esau has no chance of salvation. So he going to be before Edomite, knowing these things, speaking these things, teaching these things to the Israelite foreigners, but then when he gets before the king, he's going to try to convince the king of salvation? No, he was being wise, using wisdom, being subtle, being wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove. Let's read that again. Is it fit to say to a king, thou art wicked? Because what would happen? They say, man, you know what, Agrippa, man, fuck you, man. You a goddamn Edomite. You're going into slavery. You're going down. The Most High going to take you out. Which he would have been in his right. But guess what? It wouldn't have went too good for him in there. Then the officer would have came and grabbed him up and, roughed him up. And guess what? Next thing you know, the Apostle Paul is, being beheaded. They couldn't crucify him because, he was a Roman, he had Roman citizenship. So it says, is it fit to say to a king, thou art wicked, and to princes you are ungodly? It says, how much less to him that accepteth not the persons of princes, which is the Most High, nor regardeth the rich more than the poor, for they all are the work of his hands. So the Most High set them up, and he gave us the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding on how to deal in these situations. In a moment, it says, in a moment shall they die, and the people shall be troubled at midnight. And what midnight? Meaning when Esau goes down. And pass away, and the mighty shall be taken away without hand. But the point is that they have power. And really, if you're in that situation, you really shouldn't say, you know what, you the goddamn wicked, the Most High gonna kill you anyway, because that's not wisdom. Now let's go from there to the book of 1 Corinthians, the 4th chapter. I'm not sure if this was a precept that popped up or a precept that popped up in my head as I was writing these scriptures down. I don't really remember how it went down, but it doesn't matter. It's all in the spirit, regardless of however it went down. So this is 1 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 4. It says, for I know nothing by myself, yet am I not hereby justified, but he that judgeth me is the Lord, because these people really can't judge us. Any tongue that rises up against thee in judgment, thou shalt condemn. For this is the heritage of the servants of the Most High, and their righteousness is of me. That's what the Lord said. That's why he said in Revelation 14, he said that in their mouth was found no guile. It says, therefore judge nothing before the time, because there's a time and a place for everything. Therefore judge nothing before the time until the Lord come. Because you better believe that Agrippa, the Herods and all, they're going to get theirs. Esau today ruling and all, they're going to get theirs. But that's the place of the Most High. All we got to do is just tell, when we out preaching and teaching, we just tell them what the Lord going to do. The Lord's going to do it. Therefore judge nothing before the time until the Lord come, who both will bring to light the hidden things of darkness and will make manifest the counsels of the hearts, and then shall every man have praise of the Most High. Judge nothing before its time. Now let's go back to Ecclesiastes 8, and let's go to the 5th verse. Whoso keepeth the commandment shall feel no evil thing. And a wise man's heart, a wise man's heart discerneth both time and judgment. You see? There's a time to speak, a time to refrain from speaking. A time to get rowdy, a time to refrain from that. It all depends on the situation. Now let's go back to Ecclesiastes 10 and let's read 4 again. If the spirit of the ruler rise up against thee, leave not thy place, for yielding pacifieth great offenses. And that's what the Apostle Paul did. Because that lame, Haman the layman, is trying to use that as, you know, the Apostle Paul, you know, he was teaching, he was trying to convince Agrippa, you know, you know, that you know, he can receive salvation. No, sucker. Proverbs 25:15. By long forbearing is a prince persuaded. Did you hear that? By long forbearing is a prince persuaded. Because if you're in a situation where the ruler is against you, you have to sit there, and you might have to sit there for a long time trying to explain the situation in a way to where you can find favor in the sight of that individual who has, you know, the ability to either let you go or hold you. By long forbearing is a prince persuaded, and a soft tongue breaketh the bone. You see? Because they're in a position to where their word is final at that present moment. But if you, using wisdom, being wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove, using soft answers, are able to use that wisdom to convince them, then boom, now you're out of that situation. And read that again, that's a bad precept. By long forbearing is a prince persuaded, and a soft tongue breaketh the bone. And that was the last precept I had on that. I'm going to read some of these precepts that you brothers put up here. Y'all brothers been on fire. Let's see. This is the elder Monaghan. Sirach 13:13. Observe and take good heed, for thou walkest in peril of thy overthrowing. When thou hearest these things, awake in thy sleep. That's right, that's right. Let's see. Sirach 8:1. Strive not with a mighty man, lest thou fall into his hands. Wow. Woo. Proverbs 22:3. A prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself. Right. But the simple pass on and are punished. Like you had that one individual that was in the car, and he refused to do something, and then when the cops were ready to arrest him, then they started calling on the Most High and YAHAWASHI. Oh God! You didn't use wisdom, my man. Let's see. Colossians 4:6. Let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer every man. Matter of fact, I'll start at 5. Walk in wisdom toward them that are without, redeeming the time. Let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt. Beautiful. That thou may know how you ought to answer every man. Right. Because every answer is different depending on the situation. Let's see. Yeah, I see somebody put that same scripture in Proverbs 25. Beautiful. Ecclesiasticus 22:27. Who shall set a watch before my mouth, and a seal of wisdom upon my lips, that I fall not suddenly by them, by my lips, by my tongue, and that my tongue destroy me not. That's right. Because the tongue, boy, loose lips sink ships, and the looser the lips, the quicker the ship sinks, or the bigger the ship sinks. This is Ecclesiasticus 9:13. Keep thee far from the man that hath power to kill, so shalt thou not doubt the fear of death. Right. And if thou come unto him, make no fault, lest he take away thy life presently. Remember that thou goest in the midst of snares, and that thou walkest upon the battlements of the city. That's Benji, St. Benji, out there in Chicago. Yeah, man, beautiful, beautiful precepts. I'm going to say like my man Mike, good stuff, good stuff. All right, so pretty much going to leave it there. You know, the point was already made. You know, Lord's will, you brothers and few sisters have been edified. And to the next time I say, Shalom.